The training facility on Kepler Station buzzed with nervous energy as cadets from 12 different species filled the massive auditorium. Commander Zixtal of the Vraxian Empire stood at the podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the mixed crowd of future galactic peacekeepers. "Welcome to advanced combat training," his voice boomed through the translation devices each cadet wore. "You represent the finest warriors your worlds have to offer. Today, we begin separating the strong from the weak." In the back rows, a small group of humans sat motionless. Unlike the Krillian cadets who were sharpening their natural claws or the Thermac warriors performing intimidating battle roars, the humans simply observed. Their stillness was almost eerie among the chaos of alien preparation rituals. "Cadet," Sarah Chen sat with her hands folded, watching as a massive Gorkan warrior flexed his 6-foot frame and demonstrated crushing rocks with his bare hands. Beside her, Marcus Rodriguez quietly cleaned his fingernails, seemingly unbothered by the impressive display of alien strength happening just meters away. "Look at those creatures," whispered Vectar, a reptilian Seth, pointing toward the humans with one of his forked tongues. "They show no fear, no excitement. Are they broken somehow?" Commander Zixtal had noticed the humans too. In his 50 years of training warriors, he had never encountered a species that remained so calm before combat instruction. Most races either displayed obvious aggression or clear nervousness. These humans showed neither. "Perhaps they lack proper warrior instincts," suggested Lieutenant Corvex, a crystalline being whose body literally vibrated with anticipation. "Their planet records show they only recently achieved space travel. Maybe they are not suited for combat roles." The commander's curiosity grew stronger. He had read the basic files on Earth's species, but something felt incomplete about the information provided. The humans had passed all physical and mental tests to qualify for advanced training. Yet they seemed almost bored by the prospect of learning galactic combat techniques. During the first training exercise, the differences became even more apparent. Alien cadets roared, hissed, clicked, and made various threatening sounds as they prepared for simulated battle scenarios. The humans simply checked their equipment methodically and moved into position without fanfare. When the exercise began, something remarkable happened. While other species relied heavily on their natural weapons and aggressive displays, the humans moved with calculated precision. They did not waste energy on intimidation tactics or flashy maneuvers. Instead, they positioned themselves strategically and waited. Sarah Chen found herself paired against a Vraxian cadet, who was twice her size and possessed 4 arms capable of striking simultaneously. The alien warrior began the traditional Vraxian combat dance, a series of flowing movements meant to confuse and intimidate opponents. Sarah watched patiently. She studied the rhythm, identified the pattern, and waited for the optimal moment. When the Vraxian finally attacked, Sarah moved with shocking efficiency. 3 precise movements later, her opponent was on the ground, completely bewildered about what had happened. Similar scenes played out across the training ground. Humans consistently defeated larger, stronger opponents through patience, observation, and surgical precision. They never seemed angry or excited during combat. Instead, they appeared almost calm, as if fighting was simply another task to complete. Commander Zixtal felt increasingly unsettled. His own species, the Vraxians, were considered among the galaxy's most feared warriors. They had conquered 17 worlds through superior combat prowess. Yet these quiet humans were systematically outperforming everyone. "Sir," Lieutenant Corvex approached during a break between exercises. "The human cadets are achieving impossible results. They have defeated opponents with significant physical advantages. Their methods are unusual." The commander nodded grimly. "I have been observing them as well. They fight like they have done this before. Many times before." What troubled him most was not their skill, but their demeanor. Seasoned warriors usually showed some emotion during combat: joy in victory, frustration in defeat, anger when challenged. The humans displayed none of these reactions. They simply fought, won or lost, and moved on to the next exercise without any apparent emotional investment. During lunch break, Commander Zixtal decided to approach the human group directly. He found them sitting together, eating standard ration packs and discussing the morning's exercises in quiet, analytical tones. Cadets, he announced his presence formally. I am curious about your training methods. Your performance today was unexpected. Sarah Chen looked up politely. Is there a problem with our techniques, sir? No problem, Zixtal replied carefully. I am simply interested in understanding your approach to combat. Most species display more passion during training. Marcus Rodriguez chewed thoughtfully before responding. We were taught that emotion in combat leads to mistakes. Clear thinking keeps you alive longer. Taught by whom? The commander pressed. Your planetary defense forces? The humans exchanged brief glances. Sarah spoke again, her voice neutral. Various instructors over the years, sir. We learned that staying calm under pressure is essential for survival. Something in their tone made Zixtal's scales bristle with unease. These were not the words of naive recruits. They spoke like veterans, yet Earth had supposedly been at peace for decades before joining the galactic community. Tell me about Earth's military history, he requested, trying to sound casual. Which part would you like to know about, sir? Asked Chen, her expression remaining perfectly neutral. The simple question sent a chill through the commander's nervous system. The way she asked suggested there was far more to discuss than a peaceful species should possess. That evening, Zixtal sat in his office staring at the basic Earth files provided by Galactic Intelligence. Something was definitely missing from these records. The humans' behavior, their skills, their unsettling calmness. None of it matched the profile of a recently spacefaring species with limited combat experience. He activated his secure communication system and sent a priority request to Galactic Archives. If he wanted to understand these humans, he needed access to their complete military records. The basic files were clearly insufficient for evaluating their true capabilities. As he waited for the archives to respond, Commander Zixtal found himself wondering what exactly Earth had been hiding about its past. The humans' behavior suggested they were no strangers to warfare, despite their peaceful reputation in galactic society. 3 days passed before the Galactic Archives responded to Commander Zixtal's request. During that time, the human cadets continued their unnervingly excellent performance. They mastered complex weapon systems within hours, executed tactical maneuvers with surgical precision, and maintained their disturbing emotional equilibrium regardless of the situation's intensity. When the archive data finally arrived, Zixtal immediately understood why the initial Earth files had seemed incomplete. The message attached to the data package was marked with the highest security classification he had ever encountered. Warning: complete Earth military records contain sensitive historical data. Access granted only due to training safety concerns. Recommend extreme discretion in handling this information. Zixtal's forehands trembled slightly as he activated the full Earth database. The first files that appeared made his scales turn pale blue with shock. Earth's military history did not span decades or even centuries. It stretched back thousands of years in an unbroken chain of continuous warfare. The planet had experienced conflict in every geographic region, during every historical period, involving every demographic group that had ever existed on the world. The numbers were staggering. Earth had recorded over 15,000 distinct wars, ranging from tribal conflicts to planet-spanning catastrophes. Some wars had lasted days, others had dragged on for over a century. The total death count from human warfare exceeded the entire population of most galactic species. But the individual conflict details truly horrified him. Humans had fought wars using every conceivable method: conventional armies, guerrilla tactics, siege warfare, naval battles, aerial combat, chemical weapons, biological agents, and even primitive nuclear devices. They had developed thousands of different weapon types and military strategies. What made it worse was the creativity humans displayed in their violence. Other species typically fought using natural advantages or simple weapon technologies. Humans had invented elaborate torture devices, complex battle formations, psychological warfare techniques, and strategic deception methods that boggled the mind. Zixtal read about something called trench warfare, where humans had spent years living in muddy holes while shooting at each other across empty fields. He learned about blitzkrieg tactics, where humans had coordinated multiple military branches to overwhelm enemies with shocking speed. The file on guerrilla warfare described how humans, could blend invisibly into civilian populations while conducting military operations. The documentation included detailed analysis of human psychological adaptation to combat stress. Unlike most species who became less effective after exposure to violence, humans actually improved their fighting capabilities through experience. They developed emotional coping mechanisms that allowed them to function normally despite witnessing extreme brutality. Most disturbing was a section labeled Total War Doctrine. Humans had developed military philosophies that rejected any distinction between military and civilian targets. During their most intense conflicts, entire societies had been mobilized for destruction, with every citizen contributing to the war effort in some capacity. Commander Zixtal paused reading when he reached records of something called World War II. The scale defied comprehension. Over 60 million humans had died in a single conflict lasting 6 years. The war had involved every continent and utilized weapons capable of destroying entire cities instantly. Yet humans had fought 2 separate global wars within 30 years of each other. The files indicated that these were not even the deadliest conflicts in Earth's history, merely the most recent large-scale examples. As he continued reading, a terrifying pattern emerged. Human military technology had advanced exponentially during periods of active warfare. They developed aircraft, submarines, radar systems, computers, rockets, and nuclear weapons primarily as military tools. Many of their greatest technological breakthroughs had emerged from attempts to kill each other more efficiently. The psychological profiles were equally disturbing. Humans possessed an unusual ability to compartmentalize extreme violence. They could participate in horrific battles during the day, then return home to be loving family members in the evening. This mental flexibility allowed them to maintain functional societies even during prolonged conflicts. But perhaps most shocking was the recent timeline. According to the complete records, Earth had not experienced true peace until approximately 50 years before first contact with galactic civilization. The planet had literally been at war continuously for thousands of years, until just decades before joining the galactic community. Commander Zixtal realized why the humans seemed so calm during combat training. For them, simulated battle exercises were incredibly mild compared to their species' normal experience. They had evolved in an environment where warfare was not an exception, but the default state of existence. The final section of the archives contained battlefield footage from major human conflicts. Against his better judgment, Zixtal activated the visual records. What he saw would haunt his dreams for years afterward. Humans fighting in conditions that would break most species mentally within hours. Soldiers advancing through poison gas attacks while their comrades died agonizing deaths beside them. Pilots crashing burning aircraft into enemy ships rather than surrender. Civilians constructing weapons in factories while bombs exploded around them. Most terrifying was their efficiency. Human military units moved with mechanical precision even during chaotic battles. They followed orders without hesitation, adapted to changing situations instantly, and maintained discipline under circumstances that would cause other species to flee in panic. The footage showed humans fighting in environments ranging from Arctic tundra to tropical jungles. From underground tunnels to high mountain peaks, they had learned to wage war in every possible condition, using whatever resources were available. Zixtal finally understood why the humans sat so quietly during training lectures. They were not learning new skills. They were being reminded of capabilities their species had spent millennia perfecting. Every human cadet carried genetic memory of thousands of years of continuous warfare. The commander's office felt suddenly cold despite the station's climate control. He stared at the human training schedules displayed on his secondary monitor and felt genuine fear for the first time in decades. These humans were not students learning to become warriors. They were already the most experienced military species in known galactic history, temporarily pretending to be peaceful recruits while politely participating in training exercises that must seem laughably primitive compared to their ancestral experience. Tal reached for his communication device with hands that were now visibly shaking. He needed to contact his superiors immediately. The Galactic Military Command had no idea what they were really dealing with when it came to humanity. As he prepared to send his urgent report, one final thought struck him with chilling clarity. If humans had fought this intensely against each other for thousands of years, What would they be capable of when fighting alongside unified galactic forces against external threats? The galaxy might be about to discover that they had accidentally recruited the most dangerous allies imaginable. Commander Zixtal's urgent report to Galactic Military Headquarters triggered an immediate crisis response. Within hours, Admiral Thekvar of the Galactic Defense Council arrived at Kepler Station aboard a heavily armed cruiser, accompanied by military intelligence specialists from 3 different species. The Admiral, a towering crystalline being whose body refracted light in sharp, intimidating patterns, called an emergency meeting with all senior training staff. The conference room buzzed with tension as various alien officers compared notes about the human cadets' behavior. "Show me the footage," Admiral Thekvar commanded without preamble. Zixtal activated the holographic display system and began replaying recordings from the past week's training exercises. The assembled officers watched in growing alarm as humans consistently outperformed physically superior opponents through tactics that seemed impossibly sophisticated for recruits. Pause. "There," interrupted Intelligence Officer Morden, a cephalopod-like being whose tentacles writhed with agitation. "Replay that sequence with tactical analysis overlay." The hologram showed Sarah Chen defeating a Thermac warrior in single combat. The analysis overlay revealed that she had identified 17 different vulnerabilities in her opponent's fighting style within the first 30 seconds, then systematically exploited each weakness with mechanical precision. This level of tactical awareness typically requires decades of combat experience, Morden observed. Yet, according to our files, this human has never seen actual warfare. Lieutenant Korvex raised a crystalline appendage. "Sir, there's something else disturbing about their behavior. Watch how they interact with weapon systems." Another hologram showed Marcus Rodriguez examining an advanced plasma rifle for the first time. Within minutes, he had completely disassembled the weapon, identified potential modifications to improve its effectiveness, and reassembled it with enhanced performance specifications. "He approaches that weapon like he's been using similar technology for years," Korvex noted. "But Earth's military technology is supposedly centuries behind galactic standards." Admiral Thekvar's light pattern shifted to deep red, indicating severe concern. "Commander Zixtal, I need you to brief me on the complete Earth archives immediately. The rest of you are dismissed, but maintain absolute security about this discussion." Once alone with Zixtal, the Admiral's demeanor became even more serious. "Tell me everything you learned about human military history." For the next 2 hours, Zixtal presented his findings about Earth's violent past. With each revelation, Admiral Thekvar's crystalline form grew dimmer, a sign of increasing distress among his species. 15,000 wars, the Admiral repeated quietly. "Continuous warfare for millennia. Admiral, we may have made a catastrophic error in judgment." "What do you mean, sir?" "The Galactic Council approved human membership based on their recent peaceful behavior and advanced diplomatic skills. We assumed they were a naturally pacifist species that had avoided major conflicts. Now you're telling me they're actually the most war-experienced race in known galactic history." Zixtal nodded grimly. "Sir, there's more. According to the psychological profiles, humans don't just adapt to combat. They excel in it. Their brain chemistry actually becomes more efficient under extreme stress. They've evolved specifically for warfare." Admiral Thekvar accessed his secure communication system and began transmitting encrypted messages to various galactic military installations. "We need immediate reassessment of all human personnel currently serving in galactic forces. If they've been concealing their true military capabilities, Monsieur," Zixtal interrupted carefully, "I don't think they're concealing anything intentionally. Based on my observations, they seem genuinely committed to peace. But their natural behavior patterns suggest combat readiness is simply their default state." The Admiral paused his transmission. "Explain." "They don't act like warriors trying to hide their skills. They act like warriors who have temporarily set aside weapons but remain constantly prepared to pick them up again. It's instinctive behavior, not deliberate deception." Before Admiral Thekvar could respond, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red illumination as automated announcements echoed from hidden speakers. "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels approaching." "This is not a drill." The 2 officers rushed to the command center where they found chaos. Multiple displays showed a fleet of unidentified ships emerging from hyperspace near the station. The vessels were unlike anything in galactic databases. Sleek, aggressive designs that radiated hostile intent. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Veltara, "they're broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. They claim to represent something called the hegemony, and say they've come to claim this sector for their empire." Admiral Thekvar studied the tactical display. 20 enemy ships against Kepler Station's minimal defensive capabilities. The nearest galactic fleet was hours away. Standard protocol called for evacuation and strategic withdrawal. "Begin emergency evacuation procedures," he ordered. "Prepare all civilian personnel and cadets for immediate transport to safe." "Admiral," a calm voice interrupted from behind him. He turned to see Sarah Chen standing in the command center doorway, still wearing her training uniform. Her expression remained perfectly neutral despite the crisis situation. "Cadet Chen, you should be at evacuation stations with the other trainees." "Sir, with respect, that might not be necessary," she replied in the same unnaturally calm tone. That had been unsettling the instructors all week. "Explain." Sarah stepped forward and examined the tactical display with professional interest. 20 ships, medium displacement, energy weapons primary, minimal armor plating. Aggressive formation but poor defensive positioning. Standard intimidation deployment. Admiral Thekvar felt his crystalline structure vibrate with shock. This was not how cadets typically analyzed military situations. Sarah was reading the enemy formation like an experienced fleet commander. "Cadet, how do you—" "Sir," Sarah continued, "if you're willing to authorize it, the human trainees can handle this situation. We'll need access to the station's defensive systems in approximately 30 minutes." The command center fell silent except for the continuing proximity alarms. Every alien officer stared at the human cadet, who had just volunteered to single-handedly resolve a military crisis that had professional strategists preparing for evacuation. Admiral Thekvar realized he was about to discover exactly what humans were capable of when they stopped sitting quietly and decided to take action. The prospect terrified him more than the approaching enemy fleet. "Cadet Chen," he said slowly, "are you suggesting that you and 19 other trainees can successfully defend this station against 20 hostile warships?" Sarah's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes that made every alien in the room instinctively step backward. "Sir," she replied in the same calm voice, "we're suggesting we can do significantly more than just defend the station." Admiral Thekvar found himself facing an impossible decision. Military protocol demanded evacuation when facing overwhelming enemy forces. Logic suggested that 20 untrained cadets could not possibly succeed where professional galactic fleets might fail. Yet something about Sarah Chen's calm confidence made him hesitate. "Admiral," Communications Officer Veltara announced urgently, "the enemy fleet is demanding response within 10 minutes or they begin bombardment." The crystalline admiral studied the tactical display once more. Kepler Station's defensive capabilities were minimal. A few automated plasma cannons and basic shielding systems designed to handle minor pirate raids, not full military assault. The approaching hegemony ships outgunned the station by significant margins. "Cadet Chen," he said finally, "explain your proposal in detail." Sarah moved to the central tactical console with fluid efficiency. Her fingers danced across alien control interfaces as if she had been using them for years rather than days. "The enemy formation assumes we'll respond defensively," she began, highlighting weak points in the hegemony deployment. "They've positioned their command ship in the center, protected by overlapping fields of fire from escort vessels. Standard intimidation doctrine." Other human cadets began entering the command center despite evacuation protocols. Marcus Rodriguez carried what appeared to be a hastily modified scanner device. James Park wheeled in a portable computer terminal that he had somehow integrated with station systems. "Sir," Marcus reported to Sarah rather than the Admiral, "we've mapped their communication frequencies and identified probable command hierarchies based on formation patterns." Admiral Thekvar watched in growing amazement as the human cadets transformed the command center into what resembled a professional military operations center. They moved with practiced coordination, speaking in brief, efficient phrases that conveyed complex tactical information. "Chen," called out Lisa Wong from a secondary console, "I've got firing solutions calculated for all primary targets. Estimated engagement window is 4 minutes once we initiate." "Acknowledged," Sarah replied without looking away from her displays. "Rodriguez, what's the status on electronic countermeasures?" prepared and ready to deploy. Their communication systems are using predictable encryption protocols. We can create significant confusion in their command structure. Admiral, Tekvar realized the humans were not asking for permission. They were asking for authorization to implement a plan they had already formulated. The transformation from quiet cadets to efficient military operators had taken less than 5 minutes. Cadet Chen, he interrupted, you cannot possibly have developed a comprehensive battle strategy this quickly. Sarah finally looked directly at him, and for the first time since he had met her, her expression showed something other than neutral calm. It was not excitement or fear, but rather a kind of patient professionalism that made his crystalline structure tremble. Sir, this is not a particularly complex tactical situation, she explained matter-of-factly. Standard asymmetric engagement parameters apply. Smaller defending force versus larger attacking fleet, fixed defensive position, enemy overconfidence, predictable command structure. Standard? Tekvar repeated weakly. Similar scenarios have been analyzed extensively in human military education. Marcus added helpfully. David versus Goliath, Thermopylae, Rorke's Drift, Battle of Britain, numerous others. The tactical principles are well established. The alien officers exchanged bewildered glances. These references meant nothing to them, but the humans spoke about impossible odds as if they represented routine training exercises. Admiral, Sarah continued, we need authorization to access station defensive systems and implement our strategy. The enemy fleet will begin bombardment in approximately 6 minutes. Every instinct told Tekvar to refuse this insane request. Allowing cadets to control military systems during active combat violated every regulation in galactic military code. Yet the alternative was certain destruction or humiliating surrender. What exactly do you intend to do? He asked. Disable the enemy command structure, neutralize their primary weapon systems, and convince them that continued aggression is inadvisable. Sarah replied as if describing routine maintenance procedures. With 20 cadets and minimal defensive weapons? Sir, James Park spoke up from his improvised computer station. We don't need to match their firepower. We need to make them believe we have capabilities they don't understand. Admiral Tekvar looked around the command center. Professional galactic officers stood frozen with indecision, while human cadets efficiently prepared for combat against impossible odds. The contrast was stark and deeply unsettling. Communications, he called to Veltara. Open a channel to the enemy fleet. Sir, the communications officer responded uncertainly. Tell them we require 15 minutes to consider their demands. Admiral, Sarah interjected quietly. We only need 10 minutes. Tekvar's light pattern shifted to deep purple, the crystalline equivalent of absolute disbelief. 10 minutes to defeat 20 warships? Sir, Marcus corrected politely. 10 minutes to convince 20 warships to withdraw voluntarily. The distinction seemed important to the humans, though Admiral Tekvar could not understand why. He found himself authorizing access codes for station defensive systems while simultaneously wondering if stress had damaged his decision-making capabilities. Very well, he announced to the command center. Authorization granted. All galactic personnel maintain observer status only. Sarah nodded acknowledgement and activated her headset communicator. All human units, this is Chen. Operation is authorized. Initiate Phase 1 in 60 seconds. Around the command center, human cadets began implementing their mysterious strategy with mechanical precision. Alien officers watched helplessly as their carefully ordered military protocols were replaced by something that resembled organized chaos but operated with frightening efficiency. Admiral Tekvar realized he was about to witness either the most spectacular military disaster in galactic history or discover that humanity had been catastrophically underestimated as a potential ally. The countdown timer on the main display showed 8 minutes until the enemy deadline. Whatever the humans were planning, they appeared completely confident in their ability to resolve the situation before time expired. For the first time in his distinguished military career, Admiral Tekvar found himself hoping that 20 untrained cadets knew something about warfare that he did not. The next 10 minutes redefined Admiral Tekvar's understanding of warfare forever. It began quietly. The human cadets worked at their stations with the same calm efficiency they had displayed during training exercises. No shouting, no dramatic gestures, No visible signs of stress despite facing annihilation from 20 hostile warships. Phase 1 initiated, Sarah Chen announced in her characteristically neutral tone. On the tactical display, Admiral Thekvar watched something impossible unfold. The enemy fleet's formation began to waver slightly, as ships adjusted their positions in response to minor course corrections that seemed random, but were clearly coordinated. "What are they doing?" whispered Lieutenant Korvex. "They're not attacking," Commander Zixtal observed. "They're dancing." Marcus Rodriguez looked up from his modified scanner array. "Enemy communication frequencies are experiencing systematic interference. Their command ship is receiving conflicting position reports from escort vessels." James Park added from his computer terminal. "Sensor echoes are multiplying their apparent target acquisition data. They're detecting 17 additional defensive platforms that don't actually exist." Admiral Thekvar stared at the displays in growing comprehension. The humans were not preparing to fight the enemy fleet directly. Instead, they were manipulating the hegemony ships into fighting their own confusion. "Chen," Lisa Wang called out. "Enemy command ship is requesting clarification from escort vessels. They're beginning to suspect technical malfunctions." "Acknowledged," Sarah replied. "Initiate Phase 2. The station's minimal defensive systems activated, but not in any configuration Admiral Thekvar recognized. Instead of targeting enemy ships directly, the plasma cannons fired precise bursts into empty space around the fleet. Each burst was calculated to create sensor reflections that would appear as additional weapons platforms. Simultaneously, the humans began broadcasting false communication signals on frequencies used by advanced galactic military forces. The messages were fragmented and encrypted, but clearly indicated the presence of multiple fleet elements converging on the hegemony position. "Sir," Marcus reported with satisfaction, "enemy ships are detecting what appears to be a task force of 12 heavy cruisers approaching from multiple vectors." "But there are no cruisers," Thekvar protested weakly. "No, sir," Sarah agreed. "But their sensors can't distinguish between actual ships and carefully crafted electronic signatures combined with precise energy weapon discharge patterns. The enemy fleet's behavior became increasingly erratic. Ships moved out of formation as commanders tried to respond to threats that existed only in their sensor displays and communication intercepts. The hegemony admiral was clearly receiving conflicting intelligence reports that painted a picture of overwhelming defensive forces. Phase 3, Sarah announced. This phase was the most audacious yet. The humans began broadcasting actual communication signals that appeared to originate from Galactic Military Command. The messages, delivered in perfect military protocol, informed the hegemony fleet that they had violated territorial space, belonging to Earth's defense sector, and were surrounded by elements of humanity's expeditionary force, Admiral. Thekvar listened in shock as his own voice, perfectly synthesized, appeared to confirm deployment of human military assets to defend Kepler Station. The artificial conversation made it sound as if the station was merely bait in a larger trap, designed to capture hegemony forces intact. "How are you generating my voice patterns?" he demanded. "Standard audio analysis and synthesis," James Park replied without looking away from his screens. "We needed authorization codes that would sound authentic to enemy intelligence officers." The effect on the hegemony fleet was dramatic. Ships that had approached with aggressive confidence now moved with obvious uncertainty. Their formation completely collapsed as individual captains tried to identify escape routes from what appeared to be a carefully planned ambush. "Enemy command ship is broadcasting general retreat orders," Communications Officer Veltara announced in amazement. "Negative," Sarah Chen corrected. "They're requesting clarification of engagement parameters before committing to withdrawal." The distinction proved important. Rather than simply fleeing, the hegemony admiral was trying to negotiate terms that would allow his fleet to withdraw without appearing cowardly. The humans had manipulated the situation so that retreat became the tactically sensible option, rather than an admission of defeat. "Sir," Marcus Rodriguez addressed Admiral Thekvar directly, "we recommend accepting their withdrawal request and allowing them to depart without interference. Pursuing defeated enemies often leads to unnecessary complications." Thekvar found himself nodding agreement to military advice from a cadet who was young enough to be his descendant. The entire situation had become so surreal that following human recommendations seemed like the most rational available option. Communications. He ordered Veltara, inform the hegemony fleet that their withdrawal request is approved, provided they vacate this sector immediately and do not return. The response was almost instantaneous. 20 enemy warships began departing the area with what could only be described as grateful haste. Within minutes, the massive fleet that had threatened to destroy Kepler Station was jumping to hyperspace and disappearing from sensor range. The command center fell silent, except for the quiet hum of electronic systems. Alien officers stared at displays showing empty space where a hostile fleet had been moments before. 20 human cadets calmly began shutting down their improvised systems and returning the command center to normal configuration. Cadet Chen, Admiral Thekvar said slowly, "Please explain what just happened." Sarah looked up from her console, once again displaying the neutral expression that had puzzled instructors all week. "Sir, we convinced the enemy fleet that attacking this station would be tactically disadvantageous for them, without firing a single shot in anger." "Correct, sir. Actual combat was unnecessary once they understood the strategic situation." Admiral Thekvar's crystalline form flickered with patterns of confusion and awe. "What strategic situation? There were no reinforcements, no hidden weapons, no secret defensive capabilities." "No, sir," Sarah agreed. "But they didn't know that. Uncertainty is often more effective than actual firepower when dealing with aggressive opponents." Marcus Rodriguez finished packing his modified scanner equipment. "Sir, the enemy fleet will likely report this encounter as contact with advanced human military forces. They'll recommend avoiding future conflicts with Earth defense sectors." "But your cadets," Thekvar protested. "Training recruits, not experienced military personnel." The humans exchanged glances that contained layers of communication invisible to alien observers. Finally, Sarah Chen spoke with the same calm professionalism that had characterized their entire operation. "Sir, we learned these techniques from our instructors back home. Standard curriculum for anyone entering galactic service." Admiral Thekvar realized with growing horror that what he had just witnessed was not exceptional human military capability. According to these cadets, it was basic training education that every human received before leaving Earth. If 20 undertrained humans could defeat a hostile fleet through pure tactical sophistication, what would happen when the galaxy encountered humanity's actual military forces? 3 weeks after the hegemony incident, Admiral Thekvar stood before the full Galactic Defense Council in the massive assembly chamber on Central Station. Representatives from 47 different species listened with growing alarm as he delivered his report on humanity's military capabilities. The tactical sophistication displayed by these cadets was beyond anything in our current strategic databases, he explained to the assembled delegates. They transformed a hopeless defensive situation into psychological warfare that defeated a superior enemy force without violence. Counselor Vex Mara of the Andorian Collective raised a tentacle in concern. "Admiral, are you suggesting that human trainees possess combat skills superior to our veteran forces?" "I am suggesting," Thekvar replied carefully, "that we have fundamentally misunderstood what humanity brings to our alliance." The council chamber erupted in agitated discussion. Delegates from warrior species like the Krillians and Thermax expressed disbelief that any race could achieve military superiority through peaceful means. Others demanded immediate review of all human personnel serving in galactic forces. "Order," commanded Supreme Counselor Mordain, an ancient being whose species had mediated galactic conflicts for thousands of years. "Admiral Thekvar, present your complete assessment." The crystalline admiral activated the chamber's holographic display system and began showing tactical analysis of the human cadets' operation. The assembled representatives watched in growing silence as the presentation revealed layer after layer of sophisticated strategic thinking. They did not merely react to the enemy threat, Thekvar explained. They anticipated multiple probable enemy responses and prepared countermeasures for each scenario. The entire engagement was planned and executed with precision that suggests centuries of military experience. "But Earth has been peaceful for decades," protested Counselor Ilnar of the Centauri Federation. "Our intelligence reports confirm this." "Our intelligence reports were incomplete," Thekvar admitted. "The full military archives reveal that humanity spent millennia in continuous warfare before achieving their current peaceful state. They are not naturally pacifist. They are experienced warriors who have chosen to pursue diplomacy. The implication sent waves of unease through the chamber. Several species had opposed human membership in the galactic community, specifically because Earth appeared militarily weak. Others had supported human inclusion precisely because they seemed non-threatening. Admiral, Supreme Counselor Mordain inquired, "What is your professional assessment of human military potential?" Thekvar's light patterns shifted to deep blue, indicating profound respect mixed with concern. "Sir, based on my observations, I believe humanity represents the most strategically sophisticated species we have encountered. Their approach to conflict resolution suggests military thinking that has evolved far beyond our current understanding." At that moment, the chamber's communication system activated with an urgent priority message. A holographic image appeared showing Commander Zixtal transmitting from Kepler Station. "Supreme Council," Zixtal announced formally, "I am reporting completion of advanced combat training with unprecedented results. All human cadets have achieved maximum proficiency ratings in every tested category." "Elaborate, Commander," Mordain requested. "Sir, the human trainees have not only mastered all required combat skills, but have developed improvements to our training protocols that increase effectiveness for all species by an average of 30%. They've redesigned weapon systems, modified tactical doctrines, and created new communication procedures that are being adopted across the training facility." Shocked murmurs filled the council chamber. Training protocols had remained essentially unchanged for centuries. The idea that new recruits could improve established military procedures seemed impossible. Furthermore, Zixtal continued, "The human cadets have volunteered to extend their training period to help instruct other species in advanced tactical thinking. Their teaching methods are producing remarkable results." "Teaching methods?" Admiral Thekvar interrupted. "Yes, sir. They call it scenario-based learning. Instead of teaching individual combat skills, they present complex situations that require integrated solutions. Students learn to think strategically rather than just react tactically." Supreme Counselor Mordain processed this information with visible concern. "Commander, are you saying that humans are now training our military personnel?" "Sir, they're not replacing our instructors. They're showing our instructors more effective methods. The improvement in cadet performance has been extraordinary." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in contemplative silence. Representatives from multiple species realized they were facing a complete reassessment of galactic power dynamics. "Motion to address," announced Counselor Cathera of the Draconian Empire, one of the galaxy's most militaristic species. "This council needs to consider whether humanity's inclusion in our alliance has shifted the strategic balance in ways we did not anticipate." "Elaborate your concern," Mordain responded. "If human military capabilities exceed our initial assessments by this magnitude, their influence on galactic defense policies could become overwhelming. We invited them as junior partners, but they appear to possess senior-level expertise." The observation triggered intense debate. Some delegates argued for restricting human involvement in military affairs until their capabilities could be fully evaluated. Others insisted that humanity's peaceful intentions made their strategic sophistication beneficial rather than threatening. Admiral Thekvar requested permission to address the council directly. "With respect, this debate misses the crucial point. The humans did not seek military authority or attempt to demonstrate superiority. They sat quietly, learned our systems, and only revealed their capabilities when faced with an emergency that threatened everyone on the station." "Meaning?" prompted Mordain. "Meaning they are not seeking to dominate galactic military affairs. They are simply prepared to contribute their expertise when needed. The question is not whether we can trust them with military responsibility, but whether we can afford not to learn from their experience." The Supreme Counselor considered this perspective for several minutes, while the chamber remained silent. Finally, he activated the general communication system to address all member worlds simultaneously. "By unanimous decision of the Galactic Defense Council," he announced, "humanity's status within the Galactic Alliance is hereby elevated to full strategic partnership. Earth's military personnel are authorized to participate in all defense planning activities, and human tactical doctrines will be integrated into standard galactic military education." The decision represented the fastest promotion in Galactic Alliance history. Within a single generation, humanity had evolved from unknown newcomers to essential strategic partners. As the council session concluded, Admiral Thekvar reflected on how completely his understanding of warfare had changed. The humans had taught him that true military strength came not from superior weapons or larger armies, but from the ability to think several steps ahead of any opponent. He wondered what other lessons humanity would teach the galaxy, and whether the rest of the known universe was prepared to learn from the species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war before choosing the path of peace. In the end, the aliens had asked why humans sit quietly. Now they understood. Humans were not sitting quietly because they lacked confidence or capability. They were sitting quietly because they already knew everything their instructors were trying to teach them, and were simply being polite enough not to mention it.